The Giants have a new head coach. He's Brian Daboll, the former Buffalo Bills offensive coordinator. What are they getting in him? What can we expect? And how about a little bit more on Joe Schoen, the new general manager? Joining me on the Locked On Giants podcast will be Nick Fierro. He is the publisher of Bill Central. He's coming up next to give us all the answers and then some.
You are Locked On Giants, your daily New York Giants podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, New York Giant fans, and welcome to a new edition of the Locked On Giants podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast family, your team every day. My name is Patricia Traina, and those of you who might have missed me earlier today being Friday, I purposely held off from recording a show because I suspected the Giants might have a decision on their head coaching search, and sure enough, here we are. We have a new head coach, Brian Daboll, the former offensive coordinator for the Buffalo Bills. And for today's show, I went right to an expert who has covered the Buffalo Bills and who could really give us some insight into what the Giants are getting. He is Nick Fierro, and he's a part of the SI's Fan Nation network, writes for Bill Central. And the SI Fan Nation Network is, of course, where Giants Country can be found. That's the site that I write for and manage. So Nick is going to give us the lowdown on what the Giants are getting from Brian Daboll. We talked about the type of offense he runs, what type of person he might be, how good of a head coach he might turn into, defense. We talked a little bit also about Joe Schoen to get some perspective on him and that whole working relationship. So that interview is coming at you right now. All right, Giant fans, welcome back to the Locked On Giants podcast. Now joining me here is Nick Fierro. He is the publisher of the Bill Central website, which is part of the Fan Nation group, which Giants Country is a part of. We're part of SI.com's family. And Nick, appreciate you coming on to talk Brian Daboll with me.
Oh, I appreciate the opportunity.
All right. So, Nick, what do Giants fans and Giants Country need to know about Brian Daboll?
I think what they're getting is a level-headed guy who doesn't get too high, doesn't get too low. It was a different situation with the Bills. He was up in the box, he was not down the field. So you really didn't get a chance to see him kind of showing a lot of emotion. And he went through a lot of, personal hardships this year. He lost both his grandmother and his grandfather within weeks of each other, and they were the ones who raised him. He got through it. All the players really love him, especially Josh Allen. And that was really big. And I'm sure that was huge factoring into the Giants' decision, because they're going to be giving Daniel Jones every opportunity here to kind of pull through after 3 seasons. And probably Brian Daboll was the best choice for that if you're going to do that when you look at what he did, with Allen. And so I think you get somebody like that. You're not going to get somebody who's going to beat you over the top of the head. Hey, let's get going right now. But at the same time, there will be a sense of urgency that, we can get things done right away. And I think that he can effect a change right away. It might not show up, in the form of a Josh Allen type season I don't know that, that Daniel Jones is capable of that, but I think he'll get the most out of him eventually.
All right. Now tell us a little bit about the system that he runs there. What are some of the characteristics that you think might come down with him from Buffalo?
Well, as you could tell from watching them, they like to kind of chuck it around. He comes from a New England system. He's another, ironically enough, he's another New England disciple of Bill Belichick, but a different type of guy. And he worked with him in 2 different stints and for a pretty long time. But it's not really, I wouldn't call it a real traditional type offense. They will throw it, and he likes to throw it more than he likes to run it. But if again, it depends on the health of the running back, right? I mean, if Saquon's healthy, I think you're going to see a good dose of him too. It looks like they're committed to him too, and so that's a different type of running back. He needs the ball. It's a different deal. Their top running back in Buffalo turned out to be Devin Singletary, who's a really nice player, but 5'7", 210 pounds. He's not Saquon Barkley. I think what you're going to see is he's going to utilize Daniel Jones in the running game, like he did like he's done with Josh Allen. I mean, Jones was clocked. I was covering the game. I used to cover the Eagles. He was clocked at 22 miles an hour or something like that. It was the fastest time by any quarterback, including Lamar, including. So who am I thinking about here? Lamar Jackson.
Lamar Jackson.
Yeah. So sorry about that name. I think he's going to do that. And I think we're going to see that, and they're not going to be afraid to run the ball with the quarterback. There's going to be concerns about the hits that he's going to take, but I think he's going to open things up that way.
What kind of person is he in terms of, the locker room? I mean, is he laid back? Is he intense? I mean, how would you best describe him?
Well, I've never been in the locker room, because with COVID, and this past year was my first on the. So I've never actually been able to really kind of get a read on him, and but I will say that he's pretty level-headed, pretty quiet guy. He's not going to be an in-your-face type of coach. He just believes in moving on. You have a setback, you move on. You have a real big play, you score a couple of touchdowns, celebrate and move on. In that respect, he's kind of like Belichick. He's on to the next thing.
What about, with the Giants, they basically got to redo their whole offense, especially their offensive line. If based on what you know about the players, the type of players he has on offense, and I know, he didn't personally handpick them, but what kind of players would you expect him to bring for that offensive line? Are they more athletic? Are they the smaller type, the bigger type? What do you think he might favor?
I'm fairly certain he's going to want the athletic lineman. I think that's the wave of the future for most teams. You want your center to be out ahead of the sweep, your guards. You want these guys to be able to play multiple positions, and for that to happen, you have to have a good amount, I think, of athleticism. They moved a lot of people around just this past year in Buffalo. They switched their right tackle to right guard, Darrell Williams from right tackle to right guard. They plugged in a rookie at right tackle, and they also moved away from their left guard and John Feliciano. So they made some changes along the way, and I think that I think he'll make do with what he can have, and if you have a real big road grading left tackle, he'll go with that too. But I think what he'd like to be able to do is just be able to do whatever they can, and that's he likes to talk about putting game plans together where if they have to run the ball 40 times, they'll do that. If they have to throw the ball 40 or 45 times, they'll do that. But really what it comes down to is the favorite is throwing it. And so they want to be able to protect the quarterback. And I think you have to be really athletic to protect the quarterback now. You can't just be one of these guys set in stone. The athletes are just too good on defense, and not just the guys on the edge, but coming up the middle now too. And so you got to be good. The guards have to be good. You got to be light on your feet, and you have to be able to vary your sets. You can't just do vertical sets. You got to do short sets. You got to do jump sets, and I think you got to be prepared to do everything.
All right, Giant fans, we have more coming up on today's Locked On Giants podcast. But first, got to tell you about an incredible app everybody who buys gas needs to know about. It's called the Get Upside app, and it's available in the App Store or Google Play right now. Use promo code TOUCHDOWN to get 25 cents per gallon or more on your first fill-up. Cash back. Don't pay full price at the pump anymore. Get cash back using the Get Upside app. And when you download it and install it and use our promo code TOUCHDOWN, your first fill-up, you will get 25 cents per gallon or more back. You can cash out anytime you want to your bank account, to PayPal, or via an e-gift card for Amazon or other brands. Again, that's the free Get Upside app, and that promo code is touchdown for 25 cents per gallon or more cash back on your first fill up. All right, Giant fans, we have more on today's program, but first, the NFL playoffs is headed into the championship round, and soon we're going to find out who is playing in the Super Bowl. And no matter who you like in this weekend's game, BetOnline is your number one source for all the best sports wagering action for 2022. Check out their new updated desktop and mobile website, where you can sign up today for a 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit when you use the promo code LOCKEDON. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to wager on all your favorite sports, the playoffs, NHL, hopefully, fingers crossed, MLB if it comes back, NBA, you name it, they have it. So don't wait. Go and check out all the offers that they have available for 2022 and take advantage of your 50% welcome bonus with the promo code Locked On. Now, I was going to ask you, I saw a stat when I was doing some research that Buffalo tended to favor and operate out of 11 personnel, which of course is one back, one tight end, for the majority of its offensive plays. I mean, do you find that to be the case still? And what are some of the variations that, do they use? I mean, are they more vertical? Are they doing the shorter routes, sideline to sideline, vertical? I mean, what can you tell us about that?
Oh, they do like to do 11 personnel, but I think it's just based on the strength of their players. They didn't have a lot of depth at tight end. Tommy Sweeney was used as the second tight end a lot early in the season, but then toward the end of the season, he wasn't even activated on game day, so they were just going with one tight end up on game day. So that's really all they had. And when they had to go with a two tight end system, they would bring in the extra lineman, Tommy Doyle, in a heavy run formation. But Dawson Knox has really been their only tight end. And I think they like to go with that. I think that's what you'll see a lot of with the Giants. And, he likes to go vertical. They like to take shots down the field. And that was kind of one of the knocks on them this year early, when they were losing games, that maybe they weren't taking enough of what was given to them underneath, and were trying to take too much. And it wasn't there because teams were giving them a lot of two deep looks, three deep, cover three, cover two, and they weren't as quick to adjust to that. And the offense would fall into these lulls where they didn't score for periods at a time, or 2 or 3 quarters at a time. And toward the end of the year, they figured it out, obviously, but it was not the same juggernaut that they were the year before. But I think that's what they want to do. They like to be able to be aggressive, but I think it all starts with the quarterback being able to take the ball in quarterback draws and not be afraid to run it. I don't know how often Jones did run it, because I kind of haven't been covering the Giants here lately. But since I've switched over to the Bills, but I think whenever you saw him running, I think you're going to see him more.
That's not good news. They better learn how to slide if that's going to be the case. But
that'll be a thing too. They don't like it when Allen doesn't slide. And Allen's a big guy, 240 pounds, and he likes to lower his shoulder. And most times he wins. Pretty much every time he wins. But even at some point, he's not going to get up. And, that's going to be a problem for them. And that's kind of what I'm working on now. Who's going to be their next backup quarterback? And that's going to be a big deal because they had Mitchell Trubisky in on a one-year deal. There's no way they're going to be able to keep him. He's going to be looking for somebody who's going to at least give him a chance to start. And maybe if the market's not there, he comes back to him. Maybe he ends up in New York.
Yeah, I was going to say that. I think he's going to be on their radar. I'd be stunned if he's not on their radar. But, we talk about Daboll and the offense. What about the defense? I mean, I know that's not his side of the ball, but if you had to take a guess, what kind of system do you think he might want to run? Or do you anticipate he's going to basically hire the best defensive coordinator he can find and say, okay, you design it however you want to, and I'm not going to get involved here?
Yeah, I think he's got an idea, and I'm sure that came up. Most of these guys, I remember when Andy Reid, interviewed with the Eagles. I mean, Andy Reid was all offense, but he had a clear-cut vision of what his defense wanted to be. And I'll tell you the truth: if Andy Reid wanted to become a defensive coordinator tomorrow, he could do it. All these guys can do that, the best coaches. And he's got a vision, and I'm sure it's influenced. I can't be positive, but I'm sure it's influenced by what the Bills have been doing with Leslie Frazier and Sean McDermott. They play a lot of cover two looks. They play a heavy zone. They have great safeties that understand the system, and cornerbacks who don't get out of position. And so it really has to do with just playing smart. And, and a 4-3 alignment, although the Bills hardly ever have the third linebacker out there. So it's really a 4-2 with an extra defensive back, in this case being the nickel corner, Taron Johnson. So I think that's what you'll see from him. But if he has a chance to hire a coordinator who wants to do things differently, who's out there, I think he has to be open to that too.
All right, Giant fans, we have more coming up on today's program. But first, if you're aiming to get fit or eat healthier, make sure you include Built Bar in your plan. Built Bar is the protein bar that tastes like a candy bar, but without the calories and without the sugar. Most Built Bars contain about 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, 4 net carbs, and 17 grams of protein, making it easy to stick to any diet plan. Head on over to BuiltBar.com today. Use our special promo code LOCKED15 and save 15% off your first order. Again, that's code LOCKED15 for 15% off your first order. Because I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you about Joe Schoen and the relationship there. Joe Schoen, we got to meet him on Wednesday. Really impressive young man, and I say that because he is younger than me, but just he seemed very smart, very focused. He struck me as a type who dots all the I's, crosses all the T's. What kind of, I guess, approach do you think he's going to take? How much of it is going to be Brandon Beane-like versus what he brings to the table himself? I mean, because obviously you're not looking for a Brandon Beane clone exactly, but Brandon's been very successful up there in Buffalo, and Joe's been his Robin, if you will, for the 5 years they've been together. So, I mean, what's your outlook for Joe now that he's on his own?
I think just going by what Brandon Beane said about him the other day when he had his press conference, and talking about him, I think what you're getting is somebody who has a real good vision, but who's open. He doesn't go into a meeting as someone who has all the answers, and he's not going to be coming in and be doing things one way. He's going to listen, and then he's going to make his decisions, and his ability to communicate with everybody in the organization, not just as football people. That's really huge. I mean, we see it. I'm sure you've seen it with the Giants. I saw it with the Eagles, covering them for 17 years. One of the reasons why Chip Kelly is not in the NFL anymore has nothing to do with X's and O's, although they did start to figure him out. It has to do with his communication skills. And that seems to be Joe's strength. And Brandon Beane raved about that. And I think that he's going to make a lot of friends pretty quickly there with the Giants, but he has his own. He's going to have obviously his own ideas of how to do things. But if you can, my sense on him is, if you could convince him to do something, he's going to listen to you, and talk him into it, and see what you get. And I think he's going to create an atmosphere where you feel like you're working with him and not for him.
All right, final question for you, Nick. Where, if any, should we be concerned about, Brian Daboll being a first-time head coach, Joe Schoen, being relatively young? I mean, he obviously, I think he's ready for the job, but where, if you were in our shoes, would you be most concerned about those two guys?
I guess because it's their first time in those jobs, and they're working together. Usually when you have a first-year head coach, the GM is, has had a little bit more experience or has been in the job for a little bit. But I think they have a pretty good vision together. Where would I be most concerned? How they handle, this first year with personnel and everything. They're obviously going to have to make a lot of changes, and it's going to be kind of tough. Kind of like when Sean McDermott came in, um, they didn't necessarily clean house right away with the players. They did with the front office personnel, and so we'll see how that goes. But they're going to have to figure out what kind of team they want, and then if the players don't match, they're going to have a project ahead of them. And so, do they want to win right away? We heard Joe Schoen talking the other day about he thinks that you can win right away while still building for the future. Well, maybe, maybe. But if you're trying to get a team built a certain way with certain players, or you want to have a 4-3, or if you hire Wink Martindale, maybe he wants to go to a 3-4, whatever. You're going to have to. It's going to take a little while to kind of change that around, and the Giants going to be patient enough because it's been a rough stretch for them. Usually, the Giants struck me over the years as being an organization that's very stable. They're not going to make any rash decisions. They're going to, give you a chance to fail multiple times before they're going to cut bait with you. But these last few years, Joe Judge hasn't lasted very long. I'm really kind of surprised that they're sticking with the quarterback for a fourth year, but they have to be careful with that, and that they have to be patient if they're going to change some things around, or they might just want to try to work with the personnel and see what they can do. I believe that Daboll believes that he offensively anyway, they have some weapons and they'll be able to make do with what they have, and whatever system he runs, he's going to be able to call enough plays to take advantage of these players. But as long as they get some good offensive linemen in there, that's going to be, I guess, number one. They're going to have money to spend. Am I not?
Actually, no. Their
Okay.
cap situation's a mess.
Well, that could be a problem then too. But they'll have to use the draft. So yeah, if that's the case, I think they're just going to have to preach patience. But they have to put a product on the field that's at least alert. And what I'm saying, it doesn't make mental mistakes. It doesn't make penalties. And if they get beat, it's because they just don't have the personnel or the speed. But they have to kind of show up, and that could be a challenge too.
Indeed, they got a lot of work to do, and you're absolutely right. They need to be patient. Something that has been hard for Giants ownership. I mean, the last three head coaches haven't lasted more than 2 years. And that's very, very unusual for a Giants organization, which is usually stable. But yeah, there's some, I don't think they can go much lower. So hopefully Brian Daboll, Joe Schoen can turn this organization around. I mean, Shane's and Daboll, they have to, well, Daboll more so has got to hire a good coaching staff. That's going to be key. So it'll be interesting to see whether he dips into his Buffalo background or college background, or where he pulls his head coaches, or not his head coaches, his assistants in, and what they do with it. So yeah, I mean, 11. They've got 9 draft picks and got to get it right. I mean, I'm tired of covering losing football. So
yeah, it was the Jets I was thinking of that had all that cap space. It's too bad.
Yeah. The Jets have the cap space exactly, but I guess they've got their own set of problems there too. I mean, I don't know. I don't follow them as closely. You probably would know better since you see them twice a year. But anyway, Nick, appreciate the time and the insight as always, folks. You can find him on the SI Fan Nation Network. His site is Bills Central, and he's Nick Fierro. And Nick, again, thank you for coming on with me, and I'm sure we'll talk at some point down the line.
So thank you.